Hey everyone, now we're going to look at my Dragon deck. This is actually the first commander deck that I built. Of course, it is mostly the 2017 pre-con deck. Of course, making some changes here and there along the way as new stuff comes out. And the most obvious change right now, you may notice, is this is not the Dragon that came with it. This, of course, is the one from the Secret Lair. The art on this one I think is just absolutely beautiful. The original looks amazing, of course, but this one's just more vibrant, and I like the way that it just contrasts with all the normal dark dragon artwork that we see. So the first thing that we want to look at is the fact that this has imminence, and as long as it is in the command zone or on the battlefield, so no matter what, unless you purposely let it go to the graveyard or to your hand, you're going to have the imminence ability, which is very simple but very, very effective in this deck, making your dragons cost one less. Of course, being a dragon, it has flying, and then the bottom part, which is very, very powerful in this deck, whenever one or more dragons I control attack, first you draw that many cards, and then you can put a permanent on the battlefield. Doesn't matter what the permanent is, creature, land, enchantment, artifact, it doesn't matter, just any permanent. And we're going to see in just a moment that we have some pretty high CMC permanents in here. Dragons, they're mostly going to be pretty big and beefy. So let's go ahead and jump into our creatures. Alright, so looking at our creatures, the first thing we're going to look at are our non-dragon creatures. We have very few, first of which being the Dragon Lord's Servant. Just a real simple goblin shaman that makes our dragons cost one less. That's all we need it for. Next, we have the Dragon Speaker Shaman, which is essentially the same thing, except it's a human barbarian shaman. Our dragons cost two less. So just between these two cards here, between these two creatures and our dragon, that's already getting our dragons four less. So very, very, very powerful in this deck. Next, we have Tigrum, the Ojutai Master, basically just not letting our dragons be targeted by any spells or abilities. Then, whenever I cast an instant or sorcery from your hand, if this creature attacked, the spell gains rebound, which it tells you what rebound does down there. Main purpose of this one is to keep our dragons from being targeted. Now we have our dragons. We have the Boneyard Scourge. This one's basically just kind of a recurring dragon. We can pay the mana and bring it back to the battlefield. Then we have the Scion of the Dragon. This is one of our alternate commanders. You could switch it out, doesn't matter. But what's so powerful about the Scion is you can pay 2 and remove any dragon from your deck and have it become that dragon for the turn. Then we have Scale Lord Reckoner. Whenever a dragon I control becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. So it's like, hey, you sure you want to target my stuff? You're going to lose something. Then we have Wasatora, the Nekoru Queen. The best part about this card, honestly, I mean, yes, it's got flying and trample and it's a dragon, is it makes these. Look how adorable these cat dragon tokens are. I mean, honestly, it's just adorable. But regardless of the adorableness, again, flying and trample and a dragon. Then we have the Sunscorch Regent. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, it gets +1/+1, you gain life. So there's, I mean, just the life gain itself is nice, but it also buffs itself. Then we have the Scourge of Valkus. Whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield, this or that dragon deals X damage, where X is the number of dragons. That number can get crazy with some of our other creatures. Then we have Colligan, the Storm's Fury. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until the end of turn. So that basically buffs everybody up if you attack with a wall of creatures. Same thing with Dromoka the Eternal. Whenever a dragon I control attacks, you bolster. And that's not just for any one dragon. If I attack with 3 dragons, each one gets a trigger. Then we have Ramos, the Dragon Engine. This one is your best option for an alternate commander. Whenever you cast a spell, you put a 1/1 counter on it for each of that spell's colors. You've already seen that pretty much, not all, but majority of our spells are multicolored. We do have a few 5-color spells, you know, the Dragon and the Scion, of course. So it gets +1/+1 for that, and then you can remove 5 +1/+1 counters to add 2 Wooburg to your mana pool. The only downside is you can only activate it once per turn. But this monster can get absolutely insane. I've gotten him all the way up to, I believe it was a 20/20 one time. So if it were your commander, you would want to focus on doing that to swing in for commander damage. And also the 2 Wooburg, that comes in with one of our other artifacts, and we'll get to that later. Then we have Silumgar, the Drifting Death. Whenever it attacks, creatures the defending players control get -1/-1. This is real helpful when you've got someone that's playing a bunch of little like goblin tokens, or any kind of token or creature for that matter that's a 1/1, just completely wipes them out. Savage Ventmaw, when it attacks, you add 3 red, 3 green to your mana pool, and it stays in your mana pool as the steps and phases in. So you basically keep the mana for the turn. Ryusei, the Falling Star, simple, awesome dragon from Kamigawa. When it dies, deals 5 damage to each creature without flying. And that's awesome in our deck because everything has flying with the exception of our 3 non-dragon creatures. Then we have the Broodmate Dragon. Just comes in with another red dragon token. Simple but effective. Then we have Croesus the Purger. When it deals damage to a player, combat damage, you can pay 2 and a black, and if you do, choose a color. That player gets rid of all those colors in his hand, so this would be devastating against a monocolor deck. Then we have the Hellkite Charger. On top of course, flying. It does have haste. And whenever it attacks, you can pay 5 and 2 red, which is a little steep. But if you do, you untap all attacking creatures, and after that phase, there's an additional combat phase. So depending on how much mana you have, you can do a bunch of attacking. Then we have Teneb the Harvester. When it deals combat damage, you pay 2 and a black, and you can bring something back from a graveyard to your battlefield. Doesn't matter, and it is a creature, I'm sorry, target creature from a graveyard. Then we have Lathless, the Dragon Queen. Whenever a dragon, a non-token dragon, enters the battlefield, we get a 5/5 token, and it does have the fire breathing. Tyrant's Familiar, flying and haste, and it does have the Lieutenant ability. If our dragon is out, it gets +2/+2, and it deals 7 damage to any 2 target creature defending player controls. So you could basically swing in. If they want to block, that's fine. I'll just deal 7 damage to it, and most of the time destroy it. Then we have Atarka World Render. Again, gotta love these dragons with trample. So in case someone does have something with flying, the trample will still do some damage. Dragons you control gain double strike that are attacking. Deathbringer Regent, this is basically a board wipe. And then we have Ojutai, the Soul of Winter, flying and vigilance. Vigilance, of course, is always nice. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. That permanent doesn't untap until its controller's next untap step. So you could basically, again, have quite a few dragons out, attack with all of them, and tap down a bunch of stuff that's being rather pesty. Then we have Bladewing the Risen. You can return target dragon permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield when you cast it. And of course you can do your fire breathing. One of my favorites, the Uvara Hellkite. When a dragon you control attacks, create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. You have all your dragons out and you attack with all of them. You're going to double the number of dragons you have. You'll get that number of 6/6 red tokens. And it applies over and over again. When you attack again with those same tokens, they'll create new copies. This card can get very out of hand very, very fast, which is why it costs 8 mana to cast. And then we have one of the classic dragons, Nicol Bolas. During your upkeep, you do have to pay to keep him out, but if you can swing in with some damage, opponents have to discard everything. And then lastly, we only have one Planeswalker, Sarkhan the Masterless. Whenever a creature attacks me or a Planeswalker I control, each dragon, so again, dragon tribal here, so we want to have a lot of dragons out, they deal 1 damage to that creature. And it's +1. Each Planeswalker I control becomes a 4/4 red dragon, so not too awful worried with that. But then at the bottom, we can also make red dragons by -3. So those are our creatures and our one and only Planeswalker. Now we're going to look at our other spells, our enchantments, instants, and sorceries. We'll start off with our enchantments. Of course, we want to have Crucible of Fire in this deck. We are running Dragon Tribal. So, dragon creatures you control get +3/+3. Real simple and basic. Then we have Palace Siege. When it enters the battlefield, we choose either Khans or Dragons. Both of these effects are actually very good. If you choose Khans, you get to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So if it's late game, you might go with Khans instead. With Dragons, however, no matter what part of the game you're in, that's always going to be good. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So either way, both of those effects are very, very good. Then we have Elemental Bond. Whenever a creature with 3 or greater power enters the battlefield, draw a card. Most of our dragons are way higher than that. Then we have Kindred Discovery. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature. Obviously, we're going to go with dragons. Then, whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. Then we have Sarkhan's Unsealing. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 4, 5, or 6, it deals 4 damage to any target, so that can be very devastating. When you cast a creature spell with power 7 or greater, it deals 4 damage to each opponent and each creature and Planeswalker they control. So very, very devastating when you cast something with 7 or higher. Dragon Tempest. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield, it gains haste. So everything except those 3 at the beginning. Then whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons. So very similar to I believe it was the Scourge of Valkus. Whenever it enters the battlefield, each dragon deals damage to whoever. Then we have Favorable Winds. This is just because all of our creatures have flying. They all get +1/+1. Warstorm Surge. This is in here because every time something enters the battlefield, or a creature does, it deals damage equal to its power to a creature or player. A lot of our creatures are very, very, very big creatures. We have another siege, Frontier Siege. We'll most likely be choosing dragons. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. Then we have Prodigious Growth. This is going to basically just annihilate people. If you can get this on the Dragon, while you have it as your commander, which I do all the time, that's almost an instant win. Especially if you can pull out one of the cards that gives us an extra battle step. Then our one and only instant is Spit Flame. It deals 4 damage to any target creature. And when a dragon enters the battlefield, you can pay red and have it come back to your hand. Now for our sorceries, we have Fractured Identity. Exile target non-land permanent. Each player other than its controller creates a token that's a copy of it. This in any game can be very, very helpful, but I find it even more so when it's just one-on-one. When it's just 2 people playing, you get rid of their thing, but you get a copy of it. And then since we are doing 5 colors, we do want to be able to kind of fix our mana. So we have Cultivate, we have Farseek. Those are 2 of our mana fixers. Then we have Rain of Thorns to take care of any artifacts, enchantments, or lands. And then we have a board wipe, Crux of Fate. We can either destroy all dragons, which we're not likely going to want to do unless we're playing someone with dragons, and then destroy all non-dragon creatures. Again, most likely going to be choosing the second one. Earthquake deals X damage to each creature without flying and each player. So yes, you're going to take a little damage, but it's basically a board wipe unless you're playing somebody that has a lot of flyers. Then we have Kodama's Reach, again, to fix our mana. And then lastly, Fortunate Few, another board wipe. This is very, very devastating. You choose a non-land permanent you don't control. Then each other player chooses a non-land permanent he or she doesn't control that hasn't already been chosen, and then destroy everything. So basically, you get to pick something for someone to keep, and everybody else picks something to keep, and then everything goes away. So literally a board wipe destroys everything. Well, and not your lands, of course, but still very, very devastating. So those are all of our other spells. Now we're going to look at our artifacts. And of course, with every commander deck, got to have a soul ring. Got to have one of these. Then, one of our newer cards, we have the Chromatic Orrery. The main reason I put this in here, yes, you do get to tap for 5, and it does give you a draw outlet. But the main thing is this. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. The ultimate fix for anybody having trouble getting their mana colors right. Then we have the Pillar of Origins. You choose a creature type, dragons of course, and you can add any mana of any color, but only for creatures of that chosen type. Darksteel Ingot. Then we have all of the Ramos parts. We have the Tooth of Ramos. This adds 1 white mana, and we can sack it to add another one. So you can actually tap it for 1 and then sack it for another one. Then we have the Eye of Ramos. That's for our blue. The Skull of Ramos for our black. Heart of Ramos for our red. And last, the Horn of Ramos for our green. Then, of course, the classic Gilded Lotus. Got to have it for our multicolors. Dragon's Horde. This is awesome for our dragons. Whenever one enters the battlefield under our control, we get a gold counter. You can either tap it to remove a counter and draw a card, or add 1 mana of any color. So again, more color fixing. Mox Amber, on top of being, 0, if we control something legendary, we can add any color of its color identity, which we have quite a few legendary creatures in here. Then we have Commander Sphere. If we need to draw a card, we can sack it. Arcane Signet is basically a staple for multicolor decks. Then we have Mana Geode. When we bring it into the battlefield, we get the Scry. Then we have Dowsing Dagger, which, of course, when it transforms, it turns into the Lost Veil, which adds 3 of any one color, so it's basically another Gilded Lotus. But what I really like about it, in this deck specifically, is the fact that, yes, our opponents get 2 tokens, but all of our creatures pretty much have flying. So that's not that big of a deal. Then we have the Fist of Suns. This will let us pay WUBRG for anything, if we want to do that. Armillary Sphere will get us 2 lands if we need it. 2 basic lands, specifically. Urza's Incubator. This goes in any tribal deck. Any. It reduces the cost of those creatures by 2, so we would, of course, choose dragons. Now, this. The Door to Nothingness. First of all, it comes in the battlefield tapped, so unless you have some way to untap it immediately, you're not going to get to use it the turn you cast it. You pay 2 WUBRG, tap it, and then sacrifice it, and target player loses the game. So this can absolutely end games immediately. And what's cool about it is it goes along very well with our 5 pieces of Ramos, because each one of these will tap for one of our 5, but then you can sack them all to add the second one. So if you've got all 5 of these, which is pretty uncommon, it's not very likely that that's going to happen, but with any combination of these and the lands we already have out, we would be able to get to our 10 mana. But of course, the other thing is our Ramos. If we can get rid of 5 counters on him, that will give us the mana we need to activate this. So, neat little combo there. Then we have the Thran Temporal Gateway. This is basically in here because it says you can put historic permanents. You pay 4, you just put 1 on the battlefield. Artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. We have no sagas, but we have plenty of artifacts. We have plenty of legendaries to target. So I feel like that fits in very well. And then Herald's Horn, also reducing the cost of our dragons. And then we can reveal a dragon. If the top card of our deck is a dragon, we can reveal it and draw a card. And then, of course, Lightning Greaves. Ooh, getting away from us. Lightning Greaves, giving our creatures haste and shroud. You cast the Ur Dragon right away out of the command zone. Boom, attach that to them, and you can start swinging right away for major damage. Alright, so that was all of our artifacts. Now we're going to look at our lands, our mana base, if you will. Of course, looking at our artifacts already, you notice we already had a bunch of mana rocks. But I feel that with a 5-colored deck like this, we want to be able to get to all of our colors as soon as possible. It has happened before where I've had access to all 5 colors before even turn 5 with some of our mana rocks. But we'll start off, of course, with Command Tower. Got to have that. Then we have a Fabled Passage. This will let us search out for any of our basics. Haven of the Spirit Dragon will let us add any color for a dragon. Lotus Veil. Yes, you have to sack 2 untapped lands, which that is rather frustrating, but this will give us any color that we need. Lotus Field, same thing, except this one's got hexproof on it. Let's see. You also don't have to sack 2 untapped lands. I didn't notice that right away. But yeah, this one you can actually, this is definitely better because you can tap something to add the mana to your pool and then bring this in. Then we have some of the Tri lands. We have Opulent Palace, Crumbling Necropolis, Frontier Bivouac, or, you know, I'm really not 100% sure how to pronounce that, but anyway, it adds green, blue, and red to our mana pool, or red, excuse me, not and. We have Nomad Outpost, Savage Lands, Mystic Monastery, Jungle Shrine, and that's it for our non-basics. And then we have 3 plains, 3 islands, 3 swamps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 mountains. There's a little bit more red in here, so I kept 5 of those. And then we have our 3 forests. So that's all of our lands. Alright, last thing, guys, I do want to just say, again, thanks for watching if you made it this far. Been trying to crank out some videos. I know I don't have much at the time, but we're just kind of getting started with everything. Again, thank you. I do appreciate it. But this one, this particular deck, this one's my baby. This, again, is the first one that I really built. It did come from a pre-con mostly, but this is the first one that I put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money into, really. I will be looking at doing some more deck techs here soon. I've got an Elf Tribal deck that I'm really looking forward to talking about, and the other one, the other main one is I have a mono artifact deck that I'm really excited about. Just a quick spoiler on that one, the commander is Traxos, and a new card coming out in the new Zendikar set, basically giving every artifact, or excuse me, I think it's every colorless creature +2/+2. Anytime you tap a source for colorless mana, you get to add an extra mana. It's got a third thing on it too, but I don't even remember what that is right now. I'm just excited about the first 2 abilities. So I'm probably going to wait to get my hands on that card before I do the deck tech. I might go ahead and do it anyway. I'm not sure yet. But either way, thank y'all again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to be getting out some more stuff for you guys soon. Thanks.